All right, so starting with number 2 on part 2. What is the first step in any type of factoring situation?
Find the GCF.
Find the GCF. Is there one in number 2? Is there a common factor between 25 and 121?
No.
No, and they both don't have x's. So I'm just kind of envisioning the flow chart in my head, or I could write it on my salmon paper if I need to. But once you look for a GCF and or factor it out, then you count the number of terms, and that'll tell you what method you use to keep factoring. So how many terms do I have here?
2.
And what's the only method we learn for when it's 2 terms?
Diamond.
Nope. Anyone
Difference
have
of
their
squares.
flow chart?
Yeah, difference of squares.
Difference of squares. So if it's a difference of squares, then you factor it using this rule. The a squared minus b squared equals a plus b and a minus b in parentheses. So is it a difference of squares? Does it have a minus sign?
Yes.
Are there perfect squares on each side of the minus sign?
Yes.
Yes. And if you weren't sure about 121, guess what you get to use on the test? A calculator. All calculators have a square root button. You just press it, type in 121, and it'll tell you that the square root of 121 is what?
11.
11. What's the square root of 25x squared?
5x squared.
Just 5x. And that's why the answer was 5x plus 11 and 5x minus 11. Because you take the square roots of both and set it up like this according to the rule. Yes, you can have the 5x minus 11 first. Questions on this one? All right, any others from the text? Going once.
I have a normal question.
Okay, what's a normal question?
If I get the notes done now and I show you, do I get more square?
All right, any other questions from the text?
3.
On part 1 or
Part 2.
part 2?
Part 2.
Okay, so let's look at 3. First step is always to do what?
GCF.
Find the GCF, or there may not be a GCF. Is there one in this problem?
No. Well,
Not between the numbers, not between 1, 1, and 42, but do they each have an n?
yes.
So then I do have a GCF. I need to factor that out before I continue further. So when you identify your GCF, that needs to stay part of your answer. It's just going to be outside parentheses. Some of you have the right answer, you just didn't write your GCF outside the parentheses. Inside's what you get from dividing each term by the GCF. So what's n cubed divided by n?
N squared.
And negative n squared divided by n?
Negative n.
And negative 42n divided by n?
Negative 42.
Negative 42. Now some of you just stopped at this step. Some of you put this in your answer. It says to factor it completely. So once you factor out your GCF, if you follow the flow chart, check the parentheses. How many terms are in the parentheses?
3.
3. And are they in a form that we said is factorable?
Yes.
Yes, we have one variable with a squared, one variable to the first, and a constant. So you factor it using the diamond method that we learned, where it's a times c on the top and b on the bottom. So a times c, 1 times negative 42 is,
Negative 42.
and what number is in the b position?
1.
A negative 1. And so I need two numbers that multiply to negative 42 but add to negative 1.
Negative 7, positive 6.
Good. That's the winning combination. And the negative has to be on the 7. Some of you put it on the 6. But it has to be on the 7 so that when you add, you get a negative number. All right. Write your final answer. plus 6. The questions on number 3. All right, that's basically the process you should be going through for every problem, especially on your retake. That's how it'll be. Once we're done with this. So questions on this one or any others from the test?
One,
On which one?
part two.
Number 1 on part 2. Yes. No, I did not say yes to you. All right, so number 1. First step is to always do what?
GCF, what is it?
Find the GCF and factor it out if there is one. What's the GCF in number 1?
Non-code.
9W is correct. So identify your GCF. Make sure that that's still part of your answer. It'll just be outside parentheses. Inside is what you get from dividing each term by the GCF. And if you struggle with finding the GCF, my tip for you is always look at the smaller of the two numbers, the 18. 18 doesn't divide evenly into 27. But if I make a factor tree for the 18, that kind of leads me in the right direction. So I see that 9 divides evenly to both. All right, so divide each term by the GCF. What's 18 divided by 9?
2.
What's W squared divided by W?
W.
And then over here, the W's cancel. What's negative 27 divided by 9?
-3.
Good. And then you always check the parentheses. Can the parentheses be factored further?
Yes, no.
Well, it's 2 terms. So if it's 2 terms, it has to be a difference of squares if we're going to factor. Would this be a difference of squares?
Yes.
There is a minus sign, but is 2W a perfect square? No. So then no. Can't factor using difference of squares, so then you're just done after the GCF. That's it. Questions on 1? Any others from the test that you have questions on?
6 part 1.
Number 6 on part 1. All right, so number 6 on part 1, you check for a GCF first, is there? No, so after checking for a GCF, then you count the number of terms. How many terms do I have? And is it in that form that we said is factorable?
Yeah.
So what method do we use?
Diamond.
The diamond method. So A times C on the top, B on the bottom. What is my A times C in this one?
X squared times -24.
Negative 24. 1 times negative 24. And then B on the bottom, what's B? Positive 10. Now we need to find 2 numbers that multiply to the top and add to the bottom. And honestly, 24 is just one of those numbers that has a lot of options. So here's some of the options, or all of them probably. Which one could multiply to negative 24 but add to 10? Which one needs to be negative?
-2.
Good. It looks like it could be 6 and 4, but there's no way to get a positive 10 when I add them. One of them would have to be negative, it just doesn't work. This works. So once you find the numbers that work, set them up as a product of 2 binomials. And the sign will depend on whatever sign it was in your diamond. So the correct answer is D. Questions on number 6?
No.
What do you need? No, I already told you no. All right, any others from the test? Number 7. All right, so then for number 7, you were supposed to select 2 answers. Some of you selected more than 2, so you need to read the directions carefully. And I wanted the two answers that are prime. What does prime mean?
A non-factor.
Not factorable. At least not by anything other than itself and 1. So you really had to try out each answer and see if it could be factored. So they're all trinomials in that form that we just talked about. So what method do I use to factor them? The diamond method. So A times C on the top and B on the bottom. So do that for every single one. Once you get to the ones that can't be factored, then those are your answers. So I try out option A. What will be my A times C?
1 time.
What's in the A position?
1 times -24.
Which is,
-24.
and what number is in the B position?
10.
So then two numbers that multiply to -24 add to 10. Didn't we just talk about this one?
Yeah.
So 12 and -2 were that winning combination, right? So since it does have a winning combination, so numbers that multiply to the top and add to the bottom, then 12 is not your, or sorry, A is not your answer. That one is not prime, because it does have an answer. This is what the answer would be. So then you just keep trying until you find the two that are prime. So then B. What's A times C?
-24.
What is B?
-11.
All right, so look at your list of numbers that multiply to 24. Here it is again. Is there any combination that multiplies to the top and adds to the bottom?
No. I don't think so.
No, it looks like 8 and 3 could work, but they would both have to be negative to add to the bottom. And there's just no way you'll get a negative when you multiply. It would be positive. So this one does not work. So that's why B is prime. Guys, voices off.
Oh, sorry.
What other one is prime? And you'll get this one right.
No, I only got B correct.
It is not B. F is correct. All right, because G could be x plus 12 and x plus 2 to give you 24 on the top, 14 on the bottom. Let's see if I remember correctly. This one was x minus 6 and x minus 4. Down here, let's see, this one was x plus 8 and x minus 3. So if it has an answer, it's not prime. All right, I'm gonna come around and check the salmon paper, so don't put them in your backpack.
Oh.